Hello there. Welcome into a Friday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening, which is sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and Well-Being. For all, a veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way over the course of the program, and I'd love to get your thoughts. 719-247-1313 is both the phone line and the text line for your convenience. Dave Toller, one half of the outstanding Air Force hockey broadcast team, will drop by coming up at the bottom of the hour to preview the weekend series against Niagara. I have tickets to this series to give away over the course of the program. By the way, I will be on the call for Altitude alongside Tyler Mon. So if you want to watch Air Force hockey tonight, Tyler and I got you covered on Altitude. But business to attend to in the meantime, and it wasn't a great night. These happen. But the prevailing theme of last night, we'll get Avs and Nuggets in here to start off the show. Those two teams were outclassed, outgunned, and outpaced by two of the league's best teams. That was my takeaway. If these two games were some sort of a measuring stick, I think in many ways, both the Avs and the Nuggets fell woefully short of where you hoped they would be. Now, what I will say in the Avalanche's defense is they have played Carolina before, and they've beaten them. But last night, they were just not up to the challenge. I'll start with Scott Wedgwood because he was the big story going into last night, getting his first start with the Avs. Didn't love it. Didn't love it. It wasn't awful. I would say in most games, if the Avalanche have to chase a team scoring 3 goals and need 4, I think they can win the majority of games like that. If you look at the individual goals, Wedgwood just, on a couple of them, very slow to react. Just did not have the, reflexes or the coordination or whatever you want to say it is to make some of the stops on the howitzers that were fired at him from the Carolina Hurricanes. So if you take into account the goals that were scored and watch the goals, then I don't know how you could be, over the moon about what Scott Wedgwood brings to the team. However, if that's the number he's going to give up when he's in goal, I think you take that more often than not. I do. The bigger issue last night was that the Colorado Avalanche did the very worst thing you could do against the Carolina Hurricanes. And I have talked many times about how similar Carolina and Colorado are. And what's the last thing you want to give the Avs? Time and space. What's the last thing you want to give Carolina? Time and space. Here's the difference. It's how they utilize that time and space. We see sometimes with the Avalanche, at times they're a bit too cute, right? Looking to make the perfect play. They see the lane open up. They see the opportunity to score, and maybe one too many passes, maybe one too many dekes. Just trying to be a little bit too cute with it. Now, most of the time you give them time and space, they'll hurt you. But at times, they'll get a little cute with it. There's nothing cute about the way that Carolina plays. You give them time and space, that puck is heading towards the net immediately. And the majority of the goals last night for Carolina were just that. Almost one-timers. Pass shot. And Wedgwood slow to react. But that's what they do with that time and space. They don't wait. They don't try to showcase their skill. They just turn and fire the puck. They must be, I've kind of not really followed Corsi Fenwick over the years. But Carolina's got to be a darling of that advanced metric. Because they shoot as soon as they touch the puck. They get so many shots. A lot of them are going to be blocked. A lot of them are going to be off the mark. But enough of them are going to be on target. And they thoroughly outshot the Colorado Avalanche last night. So you can't open up space for Carolina because you will never get that space back. You'll never be able to close off that space. Once it opens up, Carolina hits it. And it's part of why I love watching Carolina and why I keep campaigning for Carolina and Colorado to match up in a Stanley Cup final. I think it would be phenomenal. I love the way that Carolina plays under Rob Brind'Amour. But they thrive with that time and space, and you saw that last night. The biggest disappointment, perhaps, about the entire evening is that the Avalanche actually survived the first period. They were fine. I mean, they were getting thoroughly outplayed. Don't get me wrong. Carolina was the much better team from the jump. So some of the issues with the Avs in the first period, they were on full display. It just didn't end up hurting them, and they got a couple of breakaways, were able to get a goal out of it. They were right there in that game. They survived the first period. And normally, that's where the Avs, make their adjustments. We saw it the other night against Buffalo. They made some adjustments. They recalibrated. They came out with a better focus and energy and were able to get back into that game almost immediately. They didn't do that going into the second period, nor the third period. And that has a ton to do with their opponent. If they didn't do that against Buffalo the other night, you'd have to put a lot of that on the Avs. How do you not, after falling down 4 goals, come out with a better effort and more intent in the last 40 minutes of the game? But with Carolina, they suffocate you. And that's why I say the Avs were outclassed last night. Carolina played their game and just didn't allow the Avalanche to breathe. Didn't give them that moment where they could get back in the game. That's one of the better teams in the entire NHL. Here's another developing story, and these kind of things are noteworthy and attention-grabbing because of the other team that lives at Ball Arena and how they use their stars. Have you looked at the time on ice leaders this season? If you haven't, no big deal. I did the work for you. The first 27 players in the NHL with the most on ice time are all defensemen, including Cale Makar. It's normal, right? Then it's Nathan MacKinnon. Then it's 11 more defensemen. Then it's Mikko Rantanen. 3 more defensemen. Kirill Kaprizov of the Minnesota Wild, who is trending in an MVP direction right now. And then 2 more defensemen and Artturi Lehkonen. Talk about the Nuggets and playing their stars too much. Early season trend, 20-some-odd games in, the Avalanche are playing Nathan MacKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, and Artturi Lehkonen, who is their de facto other top wing, with Duran being out 2 different stints, Valeri Nichushkin being out for the first couple of months. That's essentially their top 3 forwards. And there are 3 of the top 4 forwards in the NHL in terms of time on the ice. That's not a great trend. Now, it's an explainable trend. Avs have fallen behind in way too many games this year. The negative 12 goal differential in the first period, right? They've had to come from behind far too often this season. And how are you going to do that? With your third and fourth line? With your top line. With Nathan MacKinnon, with Cale Makar, with Mikko Rantanen. So they've fallen behind in way too many games. Had to lean on their best players. More so than I think even Jared Bednar would like to. And then the second part is obviously the injuries. You just can't give as much ice time to these third and fourth liners, like, not to single him out, but there are a few guys that are in the same group as Ivan. Right? And they filled in admirably at times this season. I'm not knocking them. It's, they're not even supposed to be here. Right? But only through injuries have they played more. So you combine those 2 things, and that's why you're seeing those numbers that Nathan MacKinnon, Artturi Lehkonen, and Mikko Rantanen are playing an ungodly amount of time on the ice. That certainly has to change. That trend cannot continue. And you hope that at some point, these waves of injuries, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys at a time going down, cease. And the Avs only have to deal with 1 or 2 guys out of the lineup. But if they don't, they can't ride those 3 guys that much a game. Or else we'll be having a very similar conversation in a Game 7 at some point during the postseason, much like we did last year with the Denver Nuggets, and looking at these star players that just look gassed. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the Avs loss last night to Carolina. Again, there's a little bit of redeeming value here with the Avs. They've met up with that team. They've beaten them. But last night, they did not look to be in Carolina's class. Now, same can be said without the redeeming value when it comes to the Denver Nuggets. We'll talk about their tilt with one of the East's best next on Extra Sports 1300. It's the most wonderful time of the year, and we want to make it even better with $1,000 towards your winter wish list. You can use it on holiday shopping, travel, decorations, or to treat yourself. You don't have to tell anybody. Enter this national contest at xtrasports1300.com for a chance to fulfill your winter wish list. Sponsored locally by Downtown Colorado Springs and Downtown CS.com. So the theme of the day is getting outclassed, outmanned, outgunned by some of the league's best teams last night for the Avalanche and the Nuggets. Nuggets fall to the Cleveland Cavaliers 126-114. Nikola Jokic after the game said, quote, I think 20 games in, we should know who we are and we should know what we're supposed to do. So allow me to take a cue from Nikola Jokic and tell you who the Denver Nuggets are after 20 games. They are a poor defensive team that is unable or unwilling to shoot three-pointers in a three-point shooting league. They have the worst bench in the National Basketball Association. They are wildly inconsistent. They have, in fact, alternated wins and losses in their last 9 games. And they are currently the 8th seed in the Western Conference. The only saving grace in all of that is that their matchup in the play-in, if the season were to end today, is the Los Angeles Lakers. And if there's any team in the West that is down worse than the Denver Nuggets right now, it's the Los Angeles Lakers. And we know the recent history between those two teams. Essentially, what the Denver Nuggets are right now is what the Denver Nuggets were in 2021 and 2022. That season, 2021, 2022. Fell short of 50 wins. And Steph Curry went sleepy night-night on them in the first round. That's who they are 20 games in. A quarter of the way through the season. That's who the Denver Nuggets are. I don't think that was their intent. But that's exactly where they find themselves. They are a team right now that is getting dragged to wins by the best player in the world, who is on pace to set career highs in points, rebounds, and assists per game. We are seeing the best statistical season of Nikola Jokic's career, which by extension is one of the best statistical seasons in recent NBA history. In the 2021-2022 season, Nikola Jokic dragged a Nuggets team into the playoffs with an MVP season. And they were summarily put out of their misery by a much better team. The catch is, in that season, Jamal Murray did not play. Although, when you watch Jamal Murray on a nightly basis, you wonder if that's actually Jamal Murray on the court. Now, you'll look at his numbers last night. 19 points. Okay. Not terrible. He played more minutes than anyone last night. 42 minutes, he gets 19 points. He played more than Jokic and only mustered 19 points. That can't happen. If you would have told me Jamal Murray played 42 minutes, I would expect him to at least get 25. You got 19. Respectable number. Not good enough when you play 42 minutes. And you look at the Nuggets starting lineup. Jamal Murray, fine. Aaron Gordon, fine. Michael Porter, fine. Christian Brown, fine. Nikola Jokic, superb. Cleveland got 21 points off the bench from Karis LeVert, and he nearly doubled up the entire Nuggets bench by himself. I believe the final tally was 21-14 in favor of Karis LeVert. And Cleveland didn't just play 6 guys. I'm saying one player on the Cleveland bench outscored the entire Nuggets bench by himself. And then they added a few other guys that chipped in. That team in the Cleveland Cavaliers is by record the best team in the NBA. And the Nuggets, with everyone at their disposal, were outmanned, outgunned, outclassed. That's who the Nuggets have been 20 games into the season. So if Nikola Jokic says that they should know who they are through 20, then maybe we should know who they are through 20 as well. Where's the great awakening coming from? Who's coming to this team's rescue? I don't see anybody. I see Jokic already coming to the rescue on a nightly basis. And still, that's not enough. There have been years where Steph Curry, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, if I may be so bold, did not win titles despite being the best player in the world. The best player in the world gets you pretty far. It doesn't get you all the way. And right now, it is Nikola Jokic doing the very thing that he doesn't want to do. And that is dominate the basketball and score a ton of points. He doesn't want to do it. It's not his game. It's not what brings him joy on the basketball court, but he has to, and he knows it. You've seen through the years that the best version of the Denver Nuggets is not when Nikola Jokic puts up 30, even as capable as he is of putting up 30, and he's averaging about 30 a night. As seemingly easy as it comes to him to be able to put up points in bunches, that is not the best version of the Denver Nuggets. And it's been, I've been saying it for years, and it's proven. The Nuggets record when Nikola Jokic scores 30 or more points is not as good as you might think. But he has no other choice. That is the only way they're winning basketball games. And we've been talking about this for 3 days. You know who the finger has to be pointed at first. Who much is given, much is expected. Did I get that line right? Who most recently got much given to him? And who should we expect the most out of? Not Michael Porter, not the bench, not Christian Brown. Last night was a measuring stick game for the Denver Nuggets, and they simply did not measure up. But at least Cleveland's not in their conference. I don't have to go through them. But right now, there are 7 teams in the NBA that are higher in the standings than the Denver Nuggets, despite having the best player in the world. What is wrong with this picture? the best player in the world, playing at the highest level he's ever played at, and this is an 8 seed? That cannot be the case, and yet it is. Every other night, apparently. Every other night for the last 9 nights, the Denver Nuggets have lost games despite the level that Nikola Jokic is playing at, including last night when he passed Magic Johnson. He passed Magic Johnson, ladies and gentlemen, for the third most triple-doubles in the history of the NBA. It is not a matter of if, it is a matter of when this season he surpasses Oscar Robertson. And then it's him and his teammate, Russell Westbrook. All time. He's playing at that level. The Nuggets, if the season ended today, would be hosting the LA Lakers in the play-in. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the Nuggets or the Avs. Coming up next, Air Force back at home looking to get off a bit of a schneid, hosting Niagara. Dave Toller, Air Force hockey radio analyst, joins me next on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome back. Drive Time Sports on your home for Air Force hockey. Extra Sports 1300. Tonight, Air Force closes out the first half, if you will, of the season. I haven't done the math on whether it's actually the midway point, but when you go on a break, as long as Air Force is about to, we'll just call this the end of the first half as they host Niagara. Fascinating series coming up over the next two nights at Cadet Ice Arena. Joining me now to preview it is one half of the outstanding radio broadcast team for Air Force hockey. He is Dave Toller. Tolles, how was Rhode Island and Massachusetts and the Eastern Seaboard?
Except for not scoring goals, Ryan, it was really good. We had a good trip, and you get the team together for that long. We were gone for about 12 days, so a lot of good team bonding going on the East Coast.
Yeah, at some point I'm going to annoy you with this question, but it remains pertinent. I mean, do you see something over the last 2 weekends that has prevented Air Force from scoring these goals? Because it's been obviously one of the main storylines of the year.
Yeah, it's not one thing that you can point to, and I know the coaching staff has been working at it. And a couple of days ago, I had a good talk with Chuck Dalich, who is part of our staff, and nobody in the history of college hockey has scored more goals than Chuck Dalich. So he knows a little something about scoring. And, his take on it was every guy is a little bit different. Each guy can tweak their game a little bit. Maybe it's stopping in the right area. Maybe it's releasing a puck a little bit quicker instead of, making a forehand, backhand move, just taking that shot. And each guy's game, there's something in there that they can do a little differently. And that's what the coaching staff has been working on, and that's been the $1 million question: is how do you score more goals? And Air Force doesn't need a lot more because defensively, Air Force has been playing great. It's just been really struggling offensively.
Yeah, and that's gonna happen, right? Because you look at the results over the past couple of weeks. I don't think it's as easy to say, oh, they were at home for a while and they kept winning games and now they went on the road. I know home and road means something, but just when you are a team where the margin is so small, right? You're not giving up a lot of goals, but you're not scoring a lot of goals, and that's a very thin line, and you can land on either side of it pretty easily, right?
Yeah, you sure can. I mean, and the guys know it, and they're frustrated. And when you're out there playing, and it's going to be a low-scoring, tight game, nobody wants to make a mistake, because that one mistake, if you get down by 2 goals, that's going to be really tough to overcome. But on the other side, I think defense is always there. Offense, may or may not show up on any given night, but when you play good defense, you play hard, and you get great goaltending like Air Force has been from our senior Guy Blessing, you have a chance to win every night. Now it's just a matter of getting one more goal. Maybe that's a power play, maybe that's a rebound. However they can find a way to do it, just getting that one more would make a huge difference.
Dave Toller says, embellish any contact tonight against Niagara. Kidding.
Anything we can do.
Right. There you go. But it's important to point out, because the picture that maybe we're painting is not the prettiest picture, but you look at the standings. Air Force is in a great position, and you and I talked about this the last time you joined me on the show. Like, what they've been able to do in conference has been extremely important, and they have games in hand on top of games in hand on these teams ahead of them in the standings. So they've been when it comes to Atlantic hockey, it's important to note that Brown's not a conference opponent. They've been on the right side more often than not. So that's the good part of it. How important does that make these two games, considering they are conference, obviously, but also, closing out this first half of the season?
Yeah, I think they're massive. And, you come off of a 4-game road trip like we did. We went 0-3-1. The last thing you want to do is go into that holiday break with a bad taste in your mouth, because Air Force is going to be off for about 3 weeks. We'll take finals next week. The guys will practice whenever they can around their final schedule. and then they'll get about 10 or 12 days to go home, relax, recharge the batteries, get some of mom's home cooking, and then come back for the second half. So the last thing you want to do is go into that on a 5-6 game winless skid. So that's a big part of it, but also those conference points. And there's 6 available, and the Air Force has been so good this season at home. We've only lost 2 games at home, and they've both been to nationally ranked teams with Arizona State and CC. So we've been good at home. We've been pretty good at this time of year, and we're a little bit banged up. There's a couple guys out of the lineup. There's a couple of guys that are nicked up that are in the lineup. So that break is going to do them good, but they'd like nothing more to go in there with some points against Niagara this weekend.
Dave Toller, my guest, joining me here on Drive Time Sports. Air Force first of 2 tonight, 7:05 puck drop here on Extra Sports 1300. You mentioned earlier the way that Guy Blessing there isn't a team in Atlantic hockey that's been stingier when it comes to giving up goals than Air Force, and that's what part of why I say tonight is so fascinating, because if you look at the opponents Air Force has had, unless they've had a little tiny number next to their name, this might be about the best offensive team they've seen all year, no?
It will be, and it's a great matchup. It's the number 1 offensive team in Atlantic hockey, the number 1 defensive team in Atlantic hockey. Number 1 offense, of course, is Niagara. There's only 3 teams in the country that have scored more goals than Niagara this season, and their names are Minnesota, Denver, and Maine.
Wow.
So those are teams that are all in the top 5 in the nation. So this team can really score, but they do give up some chances on the other end. So I think if Air Force can play its typical smothering, structured defense, and then maybe as Niagara is playing offensively, and sometimes you give up some defense to play offense, maybe Air Force can get some chances on the other end offensively and put a few goals away.
Yeah, and then they've had the perfect goalie to kind of be able to play to their style, because this is a goalie tonight that faces a ton of shots, but he stops a lot of them. So it's not as easy as, hey, you're going to get a high volume. The quality has to be there, right?
Yeah, it really does. And, he's a good sized guy, about the same size as Guy Blessing, around 6'3", and he does face a lot of shots. I mean, Niagara gives up a ton of chances, and he's made 30 or 4 saves in 6 straight games coming into this weekend. So he's used to seeing a lot of shots. And, what does that mean for Air Force? Well, they got to get some traffic in front of him. They got to make him move. It's kind of the same cliches. Get guys in front, try to get some rebounds, try to make him move side to side, and do all of those same things. And I'm sure Niagara's thinking the same thing about facing Guy Blessing. They're probably watching some film going, this guy stops everything, and Air Force doesn't give up many shots. So when we do get a chance, we got to put it away. But, how do you beat a good goaltender like a Guy Blessing or like Pierce Charleston on the other side? We'll find out over the next 2 nights.
We sure will. First of those 2 tonight at 7:05. Tomorrow will be a 5:05 puck drop. You can hear both games right here on Extra Sports 1300 with Dave Toller and Jay Ritchie. Tolls, appreciate the time and the insight, and we'll see you here in a couple hours.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me on, Ryan.
Yep, always my pleasure, Dave. Thanks. That's Dave Toller. Does a great job breaking it down when it comes to the Air Force Falcons. The phrase unstoppable force and immovable object will definitely be uttered by me on altitude tonight, because that's what you have. Guy Blessing is the best goaltender that this conference has. And he is going up against the most flush with firepower team in this conference. And it will be a fascinating watch over the next 2 days. But to my earlier point, Air Force right now, they're 6-1 in 1-goal games. Okay, so they're winning on that margin. As thin as that margin is, they're winning on it. They have not the last 2 weekends, but for the most part, they are. If they're in the game, they're winning. But also, when you look at the standings, Bentley, who they just lost to, and that was kind of their measuring stick. And right now they're not up to Bentley's level yet. Bentley swept them in a 2-game series a couple weeks ago. But they've played 10. Air Force has played 8 games in conference. Bentley's played 10. Niagara, the team they face tonight, 11. Sacred Heart, 12. Holy Cross, 11. Army, 11. Those are the teams ahead of Air Force. A series like this, where they have 6 points that they can pick up, and at some point they're going to make up these games. They're going to be playing when other teams aren't. And this team right now is, fees, they could jump up as high as 4th, depending on how the rest of the weekend goes in Atlantic hockey. But if they get the majority of the points tonight, they're still going to be 2-3 games behind most everybody in Atlantic hockey when it comes to the number of games played. They're going to get their chance to really make a move, and it will happen after the holiday. You'll see this. There will be a weekend where Air Force is playing and all the other Atlantic hockey teams aren't playing or playing a late non-conference or something like that, and Air Force is going to have the chance to jump 2-3 spots in Atlantic hockey. They've really done a good job to set themselves up for success come January. But this is a big series. Got to get those points. Point accumulation. Those games in hand don't do you much good if you're too many points back to make an impact. So it'll be a fun series for sure at Cadet Ice Arena, and I would like to send you there if you'd like to check out some Air Force hockey. How about tickets to tonight? I know we're threading the needle a little bit, but if you're like, hey, you know what? I can go tonight. I got a pair of tickets. Be the 13th texter to text Falcons in your name to 719-247-1313. I'll hook you up with a pair of tickets to be at Cadet Ice Arena tonight to see Air Force host Niagara. Getting to your text here. From the 719, boy, it's a good thing we live in a state where the football team, the basketball team, and the hockey team doesn't actually suck. Your show might be 5 hours long. What I've always joked, my dad and I used to joke about this. Whenever one of our teams would lose, we'd say, at least we have this team. We just, say, well, at least we got that. Right now, the Avs and the Nuggets are going through it a little bit. At least in Colorado, there's the Broncos. Right? And that phrase has not been uttered for many a year. It's been Broncos fans who have been saying, at least we have the Avs, at least we have the Nuggets. Now it's flipped back. And I've lived in this state long enough to know that there are some mystical powers at play here. And I am half wondering if the success of the Denver Broncos has come at the expense of the success of the Nuggets and the Avalanche. Like, it's either the Broncos or it can be those two teams. The late 90s were a long time ago. And it's still one of the best times in Colorado sports history, right? Rockies were new enough that we didn't care if they won or lost. They had a little bit of success, but it was just fun watching baseball in Colorado. You had the Avs coming in, winning Stanley Cups. You had Elway and the Broncos going back-to-back. I don't know that any time will match that. And I've said that before, even with the recent success of the Avs and the Nuggets. That time in Colorado was something else. Chris with a good text here to point out kind of a master teacher type thing going on tonight for the Colorado College Tigers. If you are so inclined to watch a little counter programming, now I would strongly encourage you to watch Air Force and Niagara because my self-worth depends on people listening or watching me on a daily or weekly basis. However, it is worth noting that CC at 5 o'clock is taking on Providence. That's a battle of top 10 teams. Chris Mayotte with ties, obviously, to Providence. That'll be a fun series as well. And the Tigers are absolutely rolling. Absolutely rolling right now. Caden and Barrico just winning. Was it goaltender of the month? Whatever. Goaltender of the month. So, yeah, Tigers are rolling right now. Hockey, good in Colorado Springs. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, I have some thoughts on last night's game between the Lions and the Packers, more specifically about the way that Dan Campbell continues to coach this team and why the Super Bowl in February might be the most fascinating matchup we have seen in many of a year. Welcome in Drive Time Sports. Ryan Kaufman with you. You can watch the show live on a daily basis on our social media platforms, whether it be Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube. Handle all the same at XTRA Sports 1300. Well, week 14 got off to a really good start last night, didn't it? Great game last night between the Lions and the Packers, and it gave Dan Campbell a chance to do what Dan Campbell does. And many coaches don't have the stones to do. And that is go for it on fourth down, forego 3 points, which coincidentally they ended up getting 3 points later in the drive. But giving up 3 points to try and finish the game with the offense on the field. And that's what Dan Campbell said in deciding to go for it on fourth down. He felt like he needed to finish the game with his offense. And I actually agree with that. You know, you look at the way that the game is going and how wild it is. You want to give Green Bay the ball back? So in this particular moment, and that's what we ask of these coaches, right? If you're going to make a decision to go for it or not go for it on fourth down, like don't be just blindly going for it all the time. Or just not going for it ever. Like don't be across the board one way or another. Be nuanced. Know the right time. And take into account all the evidence that has been presented to you over the course of a football game. And I thought last night, the reasoning you heard from Dan Campbell makes a lot of sense. Now, would the Packers be going all out to try and score a touchdown, or would they just try to kick a field goal? I think they would have tried to score a touchdown, but been okay with settling for 3 if the Lions had kicked the field goal there. But clearly the idea from Dan Campbell was putting the ball in the end zone. Wasn't able to do it, but that was the reasoning behind fourth down in the way that that game was back and forth and how wild it was and how the Packers were able to move the football against the incredibly banged up Lions defense. It makes a lot of sense why he went for it. So if it was just nameless NFL coach randomly going for it based on that, then you could say that was probably the right decision. But Dan Campbell, as you know, is one of those who almost always goes for it on fourth down and doesn't always have the best explanation for it. He is the epitome of you live by the sword and you die by the sword. Dan Campbell's way of coaching is the absolute way that someone who is stepping into one of the most sorry franchises in the history of sports needs to coach. Unwavering belief, relentless attack. That's the way you need to coach if you take over a team like the Detroit Lions. And it's why the Lions are now one of the best teams in the NFL. That belief, that fire, and I'm looking over my shoulder right now at the television, and I'm seeing Dan Campbell's post-game speech to his team, which would make anyone give their left arm to play for Dan Campbell. How can you not love playing for a guy like that? But you live by the sword, you die by the sword. There is an edge to that sword. And the Lions felt that edge to the sword when they were in the NFC Championship last year. Multiple situations in which the Lions could have put up points on the board. 3 points at a time, but points nonetheless, that they chose not to. They failed to score. And at the end of the day, they lost by 3. So his decision to go for it on 4th down completely altered that game against the San Francisco 49ers. But it's the way he is. Which sets up, if the current trends hold, we will get a fascinating matchup in the Super Bowl. Because we will have a team that is completely unafraid going against a team that seems to strike fear into the hearts of opponents to the point that they completely lose their mind when the game is on the line. Talking about a Detroit-Kansas City Super Bowl. Over the years, we have seen teams that have gone against the Chiefs, gone away from their identity, play timid, make decisions that didn't really seem to fit the situation because of number 15. This Lions team will not do that. They will not abandon who they are. They will go at the Kansas City Chiefs and they will be relentless and they will be unafraid. But the other part with the Kansas City Chiefs is that they live in these games where one score makes the difference. They have almost perfected the art of winning a close game. You could call it luck. You could call it game planning. You could call it strategy. Call it whatever you want. The numbers speak for themselves. The Chiefs own these kind of games. And decisions like going for it on 4th down when you have a sure 3 points in hand are the type of decisions that the Chiefs make teams pay for and take advantage of. I don't always love the reasoning that Dan Campbell goes for it, but I understand its purpose. And it bit him right in the behind last year in the NFC Championship. And it could potentially bite them against the Kansas City Chiefs. Or it could dethrone Kansas City. Because you look at some of the decisions that are made by Chiefs opponents, even as recently as this year. I bring you back to the Tampa Bay game. Right? Everybody calling at the end of that game for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to go for the jugular, finish it. Do not even get to a coin flip. If you think that the Chiefs are lucky, the coin flips against Buffalo, the coin flip against Tampa Bay this year, that is your evidence. But everyone was screaming it at their televisions, on social media. They wanted Tampa Bay to go for the win, to finish it off, to not let Patrick Mahomes potentially get back on the field. And that is exactly what Detroit doesn't want to do. It's exactly what Detroit will have the mindset of if they beat Kansas City in the Super Bowl. Oh, don't worry. We're not going to give the ball back to Patrick Mahomes. They have the exact mentality that everybody that wishes to see the Chiefs fail wishes their opponents would have. Stick to your identity, be unafraid, and go for the jugular. That's what the Lions are all about. And if we get this matchup in the Super Bowl, I hope every drive comes down to fourth down. Fourth and short, every single drive. I mean, you just heard Dan Patrick talking about it in Above the Noise commentary. It is a massive gamble, and it has an equal chance of blowing up in Dan Campbell's face as it does to be successful. And the same thing can happen going against Kansas City. I would think the probability might be a tad higher in it blowing up in their face, considering the Chiefs are one of the best defensive teams on fourth down. Just further proving the point that close games, close situations, those margins, the Kansas City Chiefs win. But it's become abundantly clear through this Chiefs run that it takes a team with the mentality of the Detroit Lions to take them down. Because we have seen the Ravens cower, we have seen the Bills lose their minds and make just awful decisions, and so many more opponents that the Chiefs have gone through over the last 3 years. The Detroit Lions are exactly what the doctor ordered potentially to end the Chiefs' reign. Because they won't forget themselves. They know exactly who they are, and they're going to do it, and they're unapologetically themselves. And, oh, by the way, they have extremely good offense that runs the ball, controls the clock, and puts up points. That also is probably a prerequisite to knocking off the Kansas City Chiefs. Lions have that too. Setting fandom or fan hatred aside, I don't know how you could find a better matchup right now, potentially for the Super Bowl, than Detroit and Kansas City. Whatever way you would root, but I watch the Lions and I say if any team is going to stop the Kansas City Chiefs from three-peating, it may be that team. I've seen this movie before with the Ravens and with the Bills and 49ers, although they're an afterthought at this point because of their disastrous season. If fast forward to February, if the Detroit Lions knock off the Kansas City Chiefs and end the Chiefs' chances at a three-peat, I will sit here and say they are the perfect team to have done it, and maybe the only team that could have accomplished it because of moments like you saw last night. Fourth down, easy 3 points if they wanted them. And Dan Campbell's, no, we're finishing this. And they did. And it's worked more than it hasn't. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on last night's Thursday night game. A weekend of football without no Broncos, no Buffs, no Falcons. Whatever will we find to occupy our time? That football weekend actually starts tonight. The Mountain West title game and the last chance for Ashton Genty to make a good impression on Heisman voters. We'll talk about it next on Extra Sports 1300. How did I know? How did I know that the texts that are currently rolling in would roll in? I'm sitting here talking about what would be an unbelievable Super Bowl matchup and how the Detroit Lions have the exact mentality that a team needs to have to dethrone the two-time defending Super Bowl champions. And I'm getting texts, whoa now. First of all, from the 951, there is nobody that wants a Chiefs versus Lions Super Bowl. Nobody? Give me the matchup that's better. And tell me that it's not just because it's the Chiefs. You don't want to see the Lions in the Super Bowl? I think a lot of people would like to see the Chiefs and the Lions in the Super Bowl. It's like that. Oh, like everyone says, they hate the Patriot dynasty and they hate the Warriors dynasty and they hate the Bulls dynasty and they're tired of the same team winning all the time. And then lo and behold, the best rated, most watched championships, whether it's the finals in the NBA, the World Series, the Super Bowl, it's always the teams that are bordering on dynastic. Even if you hate the Chiefs, it's fine. You want to tell me that you want to see the Chiefs and the Lions in the Super Bowl to watch the Lions beat the Chiefs by 30? Okay. It's kind of my point. I was having this discussion with someone the other day. Like, you don't at least want to see the Chiefs' arc of going for a three-peat end in the Super Bowl one way or another? Now, unless you're a Ravens, Steelers, Broncos, unless it's I want my team to go, if you want your team to go, then cool. What I'm talking about is what would be honestly the best matchup that we could get. From a storyline perspective, from an attention standpoint, from just a quality of team standpoint. It's hard to beat Chiefs Lions. They are, last time I checked, the number one seed in their respective conferences. They have proven themselves to be the best team over time. Now, that's not to say that there aren't other teams in both conferences that are worthy of consideration. And Buffalo did beat Kansas City. No doubt about that. Do I have to remind you of a previous season when Buffalo beat Kansas City in the regular season and they met again in the playoffs, how that went? It's not that Buffalo has no chance. It's that the burden of proof is on them. Get another text in that I'm being presumptuous. Well, they're the number one seed, the Chiefs are. Am I not being, but I'm only being presumptuous when it comes to the Chiefs, but not for the Lions? Where are the other NFC fans coming out of the woodwork saying I'm being too presumptuous, saying the Lions are going to get there? Same record, both number one seeds. Why is that presumptuous? That's the way it's trending. It doesn't mean that 100% that's what we're going to get. But if you ask me right now, I'd probably bet on that being our matchup. That's not presumptuous. I'm basing mine on 12, 13 games of a 17-game season and going back to even recent history of the Lions being one of the best teams in the NFL the last 2 years and the Chiefs winning a game that says they are the best team in the NFL the last 2 years. I'm not being presumptuous. Or at least any matchup that you think today you would get in the Super Bowl is being presumptuous. I'm not just being presumptuous. Either I am and everyone else is that says, I think Team X and Team Y are going to get to the Super Bowl. You're being presumptuous. Oh, you think Buffalo's going to? That's a little presumptuous of you. Think the Vikings are going to? Well, that's a little presumptuous. But I get it. It's the Chiefs. I know what part of the country I am speaking in. I get it. Even if, this is why I posed a person that was talking to me about this the other day. Even if it's just to see the Chiefs get absolutely demolished by Dan Campbell's Lions, you don't want to see that? You want the Chiefs to like bow out in the first round? Now that's just bias against, that's just because you hate Kansas City. Sports fans always say that they hate watching these great dynastic teams. They don't want to watch. I'm so tired of them. And yet we all come back. And I'm guilty of it too. So yeah, I'm not tired of the current NFL dynasty. Sure. But was I tired of the last one? You betcha. Did I complain about the Patriots? Yeah. And I complained for longer. The Chiefs have been Super Bowl champions for 2 years. I had to deal with the Patriots winning all of those. And yet, what did I do? They played the Rams. I watched. They played the Falcons. I watched. They played the Rams. I watched. Now, when they played the Rams, it was early. There was actually a time that the Patriots were the darling of that matchup. Sports fans always say it, and yet they tune in. Brady, Mahomes, LeBron. Doesn't mean you can't. I'm not saying don't. That's what sports talk is all about. Complain, get mad, say you hate Mahomes, say you're tired of him, say he's getting lucky. That's what it's all about. But don't deny that Chiefs-Lions would be one of the most satisfying and the best possible Super Bowl matchups that we could get. But if you disagree with me and think that either and I know you, if you're texting me, you're talking about the Chiefs, but maybe you're not. Maybe you're talking about the Lions. Tell me who's crashing that party. If I have the Chiefs and the Lions, that is what I think we're going to get in the Super Bowl. And I think that's an outstanding matchup. Tell me what's more likely or what's a better matchup. Because I'll take Chiefs-Lions over any potential matchup. Brett says, a quality of team standpoint, ? Perhaps there's a lot of us out there that want to see the Buffalo Bills finally win a Super Bowl, or perhaps the Detroit Lions winning a Super Bowl. It has nothing to do with the Chiefs and everything that has to do with teams that have either not gone close or lost 3 in a row. Okay. So is that what you're going with? Lions and Bills? You'd rather see the Lions and Bills because you are guaranteed that a team will end a long history of either coming up short or never getting close? I want, and I know it's hard to hear this coming from me because you listen to me through a filter and you understand who I root for, but you don't want to see the Chiefs be in the game going for a three-peat? Is there so many better matchups that you would want to see? I wanted to see the Bulls lose, but I wanted to see the Bulls. I did not want Jazz Knicks. I think Bills Lions would be second. I see the merits of that matchup, both from a quality standpoint in terms of the entertainment value, but also being a likely matchup. Right? So that's probably second. But I'll take Chiefs Lions. I'll continue to take your thoughts at 719 24/7 1313. Tom says Lions versus Bills will be good for me. Two franchises that have struggled. There are merits. There are merits to that matchup. Absolutely. And after I'm done, putting a hole in or multiple holes in my wall in my house, then yeah, I will sit down and enjoy very much a Bills Lions Super Bowl. They're both the number one seed. Not being too presumptuous there. And my bigger point is that even though at times I don't agree with the way that Dan Campbell goes about his business, I think it's the right mentality to potentially stop the Chiefs from a three-peat. Get to the Heisman, and there's been much discussion about Ashton Genty and what we are supposed to say when it comes to the all-time single-season college rushing record. But if you haven't noticed, I don't think that discussion is going to happen much longer. Get into it next. Just because there are no Denver Broncos, Buffaloes, or Falcons, or Rams in action this weekend doesn't mean the football is not going to be good. And it starts tonight with an elimination game of sorts. Not that we've been putting UNLV in the discussion for the college football playoff, but certainly the loser of tonight's game between Boise State and UNLV would be out. And we'll see what they do with UNLV if UNLV wins. But the secondary storyline is Ashton Jeanty. This will be the last time that he gets to make an impression on the Heisman voters, something that Travis Hunter does not have the ability to do, as Spencer Danielson, the head coach of the Broncos, reminded everybody this week and said that was a reason for Ashton Jeanty being the Heisman winner. To that, I say you're not making the point that you think you're making. But certainly if there are voters on the fence, they'll have no excuse not to watch tonight. And so much of Ashton Jeanty's Heisman candidacy has been based on his pursuit of Barry Sanders' single-season rushing record. And there have been a lot of detractors. And we can't act like all the detractors are coming at Travis Hunter, because I see just as many people on social media going after Ashton Jeanty and calling his numbers, that he's stat padding and things like that. So it has gotten a little ugly, but also I think it's actually a good thing, because I don't remember the last time the Heisman Trophy elicited such emotion from people. And it is this year, so that's a great thing. And Barry Sanders today took to social media to be an absolute class act, because people have been saying, Ashton Jeanty's going to break Barry Sanders' record, but it's going to be in more games and it's not going to count the same. Record is a record. Now, what's great about sports is that we have the ability to debate. We can debate what the New England Patriots did versus what the 72 Dolphins did. Patriots got to 17-0. They surpassed it, but they didn't win. We could talk about, Babe Ruth's numbers versus Shohei Ohtani's numbers and talk about the number of games in a season. That's fair. But the record is the record. And that's what Ashton Jeanty has been chasing, and that's what Barry Sanders has. And I thought it was very classy of him to take to social media today and say, hey, at Ashton Jeanty 2, wishing you luck tonight. My fans can gripe, but records are made to be broken, and I am rooting for you. I love seeing all these NFL and NCAA running backs showing the value of the position. Hashtag run the rock. Here's the thing. Ashton Jeanty tonight would need 340 yards to break Barry Sanders' record. Ashton Jeanty could run for 300 yards tonight, and he still will fall short of Barry Sanders' record. You're not breaking it. Now, I think him breaking the record is, the presumption that he would. There's the word presumptuous. The presumption that he would break the record, even if it took him more games, he would break it. And that would be his argument for the Heisman. Well, if he doesn't break it? then what argument does Ashton Genty have over Travis Hunter? I saw a stat today that what Ashton Genty is averaging on a per-game basis has only been equaled or surpassed by Barry Sanders and Marcus Allen ever in college football. That's some elite company. And this stat was accompanied by a little factoid that said both Marcus Allen and Barry Sanders that year, when they averaged that many yards per game, won the Heisman. So there, and then of course that leads you down the road. So therefore, Ashton Genty should win the Heisman, right? Historical precedence. The only thing, and I'm okay with historical precedents. I am a borderline fan of historical precedents. But something that trumps historic precedents is someone doing something we have not seen in history. So there is no precedent. And that is what Travis Hunter has done. What Charles Woodson did, and you could even say, well, historical precedents, Charles Woodson won. I'm telling you, it's bigger than that. What Travis Hunter has done is bigger than what Charles Woodson did at Michigan. It's bigger than what Champ Bailey did at Georgia. Look at the numbers. Look at the snaps. Again, it's not the snaps as, oh, he played X number of snaps. He's the Heisman Trophy winner, as some have been trying to argue. It's the two-way aspect of what Travis Hunter has done. He's done it far more than those other guys have done. So at worst, there is historical precedent because they awarded a two-way player in Charles Woodson the Heisman Trophy. But then again, Charles Woodson, and he's talked about this, Charles Woodson himself has said he didn't do nearly what Travis Hunter did. You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of the MVP debate. Forget what year it was, but it was Joel Embiid versus Nikola Jokic, because that's what it's been for most of the last few years. And it was Philly sports talk radio people and Philly fans diminishing what Nikola Jokic was doing and basically reducing it to, oh, they're giving him the award because he had perfect attendance, because he played all those games. It's like, no, it's not because he played those games. It's because he did what he did for that number of games. That's the point. It's being reductionist just to say, well, Travis Hunter played however many snaps. No. It's he did what he did for that many snaps. Nikola Jokic played 82 games and did what he did for 82 games. You're only telling half the story if you just say, oh, Jokic is getting it over Embiid because he played 82 games and Embiid didn't. Oh, Travis Hunter is winning the Heisman because he has so many more snaps than Ashton Genty. No. And you're kind of doing the same thing to Travis Hunter that haters of Ashton Genty are doing to him in saying, well, he's carried the ball more than Barry Sanders. He's played more games. You're doing the same thing to Travis Hunter. Ashton Genty, in so many years, maybe every year that the Heisman has been voted on, his season would be Heisman worthy. It is Heisman worthy. It absolutely is Heisman worthy. But he's not going to win. And the margin's not going to be that close, because of how historic and unprecedented Travis Hunter's season was. That's the only thing that beats historical precedents, is something that there is no precedent because we've never seen it. That's what Travis Hunter is doing. In a world without Travis Hunter, it is Ashton Genty by a mile, by a landslide. It's just unfortunate that not only will he not win by a landslide, he's not even going to win. It is possible. And given the number of MVP conversations that we have had through the years, it is possible to have two guys that are deserving of an MVP. But like the Highlander, there can only be one. And sharing it would be the least. I would rather Ashton Genty outright beat Travis Hunter than have them share it. You can share a Rookie of the Year. You could share a Defensive Player of the Year or Coach of the. I don't care. But when it comes to the most prestigious awards, Heisman, MVP, we're not sharing it. Make a decision. Look at the candidates. Pick one guy. No sharing the Heisman. But both are deserving. Ashton Genty just has the bad luck of having a historic season at the same time as one of the historic seasons in college football history. Talk to a bevy of NBA players that are playing in the era of Nikola Jokic. Talk to a bunch of baseball players before the American League, now the National League, that just throw up their hands knowing they have no shot to win the MVP because what Shohei Ohtani does is far better than anything they could possibly do. That's why these kind of athletes are so special. Ashton Genty, I'm not taking anything away from his season. I am merely pointing out that there is a more historic and a more outstanding season that has gone on, and there is a player in college football that is better than Ashton Genty, and he resides in Boulder, Colorado. But if Ashton Genty breaks Barry Sanders' record, makes it all the more interesting. But I've been feeling for weeks now that Travis Hunter is going to win, and I don't think it's going to be as close as people want to make it out to be. I remember Nikola Jokic, was it not the last MVP, but the one before it? Thought, oh, it's going to be just a couple of votes one way or another. And it wasn't. I feel like this Heisman is going to be that way. I think Travis is going to win by quite a bit. But maybe some hearts and minds can be changed tonight if Ashton Genty runs all over the Rebels. That game starts at 6 o'clock. Army also looking to finish out their unbelievable season. I mean, you want to talk about like Ashton Genty with the bad fortune of playing in the same year as Travis Hunter doing all of this stuff. How about Army? Look at the season Army is having. They'll never have a better season in their program ever than they're having this year. And with the expanded field, almost in any other year, Army would be getting that spot. But you have a Boise State team that's one blemish, is a one-possession game against an Oregon team that has made a habit more often than not of eviscerating their opponents. You want to talk about bad luck? How about bad timing for Army putting together the greatest season in the history of Army football in an expanded playoff field and not sniffing the college football playoff because of Boise State? Now, UNLV wins, and you say, well, UNLV is ranked ahead of Army right now. Until the final college football playoff rankings come out, I do not. You think I'm presumptuous? Here's where I'm not presumptuous. Until the final college football playoff rankings are out, I put nothing past that committee. I put nothing past them. If UNLV beats Boise State, I wouldn't put it past them to put Army above UNLV. I just wouldn't. It sounds preposterous. I know. But this committee is a bit preposterous at times, is it not? Or more likely, they'll find a 5-loss SEC team and say they should be in. And that's preposterous because it's 5 losses, and also you're supposed to give an auto bid. I mean, does it seem impossible that on the fly they would, with the blessing of Greg Sankey, like erase some of the rules of the college football playoff and just write in, oh no, we said only 3 conference champions get auto bids. Don't you see it there written in pencil with a bunch of eraser marks around it? Anyway, it'll be good though. DVRing it to watch it later tonight because I have Air Force and Niagara hockey on Altitude if you're so inclined. Love to be able to talk to you there. If not, enjoy your weekend, and we'll reconvene next week and get going. Broncos entering the stretch run. 2 games. I see all the scenarios that the Broncos, if they win 3 of 4, they'll get in. The 2 games that will make all the difference. They could get beat by 50 in the Chargers and the Chiefs games. If they get the job done against the Colts and the Bengals, they're getting in. And that's why Sean Payton agreed to have the Chargers game flexed. He gets a bye week going into Indy, and he has a mini bye going into Cincinnati. Those are the games that are going to decide whether the Broncos make the playoffs or not. Chargers and Chiefs, that's about higher seeding. That's about the satisfaction of knocking off divisional opponents, ruining their seasons. But as far as the Broncos in the playoffs, they get Indy, they get Cincinnati, they're in. And that's what Sean Payton's planning for. We'll get you going with first up, Broncos Colts coming up next week. Again, that will do it for me. Enjoy your weekend, and Air Force hockey also here on the radio if you're so inclined, starting at 6:30.